Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Well, we're 49 days out from Donald Trump becoming president, and we've seen some amazing things already with the saving of Carrier, and we've talked about that at length. I'm not going to go into that right now. We're looking at the Trump transition team. And, you know, most of us are a bit cynical and skeptical about politics. We've watched this for a very long time, and I got to say, I am one of the most cynical, skeptical people you'll find. So I look at the backgrounds of the people that he's chosen or that he's about to choose, and it's hard to just say, let's see how this plays out. I think we should give him the benefit of the doubt. When we look at Steve Mnuchin, for example, the pick for Treasury Secretary, at the beginning of the week, I said I thought it was extremely encouraging that he had John Allison, former head of BB&T. He'd been a banker for 40 years of a regional bank. He knew the problems with regulations. He knew how they worked. He knew the problems with the bureaucracy. And he was a total free market guy. And he had a great background. So I said, boy, I sure hope that Donald Trump picks him. Very next day, he picks Steve Mnuchin. Of course, he has a long relationship with Steve Mnuchin as his campaign finance manager. But the thing that concerns people, of course, is Mnuchin's connections to Goldman Sachs, also to George Soros. There's Soros connections in the background, as well as being at Harvard and being skull and bones. I mean, there's all kinds of things like that we can bring up. But let's take a look at what he has said. Now, as soon as he was appointed Treasury Secretary, people kept saying to him, what are your priorities? And he reiterated what Donald Trump had said. Hey, we're going to cut taxes. We're going to cut regulations. We're going to repatriate capital, all those sorts of things. Look, if he does that, even if he was a Goldman Sachs banker, that's a good thing. That's the right thing to do. And that's what we're going to look at in this article. He's now saying that one of the top 10 priorities for Donald Trump is to get rid of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. In other words, to sell them, to put them in the marketplace. He said it makes no sense that these are owned by the government, have been controlled by the government for as long as they have. And of course, Fannie Mae was created in 1938, Freddie Mac in 1970, as New American points out in this article. He says in many cases, they displace private lending in the mortgage markets. We've got to get them out of government control. And they point out in the article, New American, they say Fannie Mae was part of FDR's New Deal. It was created to expand the mortgage market by making loans that local or regional banks couldn't make or didn't want to make. Well, why wouldn't they want to do that? It might have to do with the fact that they're non-performing loans. And we should remember that as all this stuff came crashing, we had at the head of Fannie Mae, we had Jamie Gorelick, who had been in the Justice Department for Bill Clinton. And he made $26 million in bonuses. So you've got this strange organization that is supposed to be a separate business, but it's created by the government. And then when it went bankrupt and cost taxpayers $200 billion, that was taken over and run in receivership by the Treasury Department. So one of the first things they want to do is get rid of this thing. Let's put this out. Let's privatize it. Let's sell it. It's not something the government should be involved in. I think that's a great idea. And so the New American looks at this and say, well, is this really one of his top 10 priorities? We'll have to see. Maybe it's just a sop, they said, to Trump supporters who are really concerned about another Goldman Sachs alumni being put in the administration. And of course, people like Chuck Baldwin have said, look, if you want to define globalist banking elite, no one personifies this better than Steve Mnuchin. He was an investment professional, as I mentioned, with the Soros Fund, with Goldman Sachs. He was there for 17 years. If he really wanted to drain the swamp, he would have appointed somebody like Ron Paul or somebody like John Allison. Nevertheless, they finished by saying exactly what I said at the beginning. Whether he is a plant that has been inserted to steer Trump's ship in favor of globalism or not, Mnuchin is doing the right thing by disclaiming against two government mortgage giants. They were unconstitutional from the beginning. They have cost taxpayers billions. They should be jettisoned. So let's just roll this back a little bit. Let's try to control our cynicism and give it a chance, unless it comes to the Secretary of State. And I have to say that when we look at Kellyanne Conway coming out and saying Trump's 4 likely picks for Secretary of State, we've got the good, which would be Bob Corker. We've got, I would say, the bad, Giuliani. And then we've got the really, really ugly, Romney, and the ugliest of them all, General Petraeus, being discussed. Now, she does say, look, we don't know yet. This is going to be his decision. This list is fluid. It could expand. It could narrow. But when we look at these people, for instance, I say Corker, and nobody is perfect in their background, but he does have a really good background. This is a guy who's a successful entrepreneur. He started out in 1978. He had been working minimum wage jobs and saved up $8,000, started a construction company. Within 30 years, he built that to a business and real estate that he sold for $19 million. So he goes from $8,000 to $19 million in 30 years. And then he kind of retires from that and he gets involved in government. He had a very successful tenure in government as a mayor in Chattanooga with education and other things. So he's got a lot of good things in his background. Giuliani is a close friend of Trump. He would be following his lead, I believe, and not working against him as Romney would. That's a big positive there. But when we look at General Petraeus, think about this. General Petraeus is someone who back in 2014 was selling the TPP, something that Donald Trump says he's going to get rid of from day one. Petraeus was selling the TPP in 2014 as a matter of national security. And then he goes on to say that climate change is a matter of national security. Okay, before John Kerry was telling everybody that climate change was as big a threat to our national security as ISIS was, General Petraeus was doing that. So think about that. Just think about that for a moment. TPP is a national security issue. Climate change is a national security issue, according to David Petraeus. But real national security, in terms of keeping track of classified documents, that's not an issue. That's a personal decision that he made. That was something for which he did get punished, but it was a misdemeanor, not a felony. And of course, when we look at this, the Daily Mail points out that if Trump were to pick Petraeus as his Secretary of State, Petraeus would have to check in with his patrol officer. Do you see the problem with how this looks? I hope Donald Trump sees the problem with how this looks. They say the defendant shall submit his person, his residence, his office vehicles, any computer systems, including computer data storage, media, or any electronic device capable of storing, retrieving, or accessing data to which they have access or control, to a search from time to time conducted by U.S. probation officers and other such law enforcement personnel as the probation officer may deem advisable without warrant. Okay, so here's a guy that you're going to put in as Secretary of State, and I think he's like third, maybe fourth in line to the president. This is a guy who has ignored national security, and instead of going to jail with multiple felony convictions, he was kind of given a pass like Hillary Clinton. He did get a misdemeanor conviction, and that's what we're looking at here. He got 2 years probation as the misdemeanor, and he got a fine of $100,000 for sharing massive amounts of information with his mistress, Paula Broadwell. So this is a guy, though, that under the terms of his parole would have to notify the probation officer within 72 hours of any change in residence or change of employment. So he's going to have to call up the probation officer and say, hey, Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so, I just got a new job. Oh, yeah, what is that job? Secretary of State. That's absolutely insane, okay? And the fact that his documents would be subject without warrant to searches. How are we going to maintain security with that? And of course, remember that at Bilderberg, and he is a regular attendee of Bilderberg, he is part of the globalist inner circle. This is a guy who is as connected and as much of a made man by the globalist cabal as Henry Kissinger or Zbigniew Brzezinski. So this guy truly is the worst of the worst. And understand that his security issues are not over here and Hillary's are over here. They're intertwined with each other. There were 1,000, this is going back just to this last October from Fox News, 1,000 emails between Clinton and Petraeus that are missing from the records that were sent to the State Department, say the FBI. So out of the 30,000 emails, 1,000 of them were to him, and they're missing. And it says CENTCOM records show approximately 1,000 work-related emails between Clinton's personal email and General David Petraeus, former commander of CENTCOM, and guess what? He sent those as CENTCOM commander. On January 10th, 2009, right at the beginning of the Clinton administration of the Secretary of State, she wrote General Petraeus on an email and said, as he was head of CENTCOM, here's my personal address on my BlackBerry account. Quote, if there's anything you need or want me to know, please use the personal email address. All the best, Hillary. So this is a co-conspirator with Hillary Clinton in these crimes. Not going to prosecute Hillary. Hillary for prison. The optics on this, the double standard on this, incredibly bad. That would be a losing proposition. Well, that's it for tonight's news. Join us on Monday, 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, for the Infowars Nightly News.
In case you haven't heard, Infowars has become the most influential media outlet in America. We're making freedom go viral. And now we are proud to announce a new weapon in the epic battle against the globalists. Infowars Prime, where you can watch live high-definition feeds of The Alex Jones Show, plus exclusive insider videos from the Infowars crew and behind-the-scenes action. Go to Infowars.com/app and download today. Infowars Prime is available right now for your iPhone or Android. You will have access to exclusive videos that you can't see anywhere else. And that means live coverage of events and breaking news on location as it happens. You can also take advantage of amazing deals from the Infowars store that are only available for Infowars Prime subscribers. That's Infowars Prime at Infowars.com/app. And if you can hear my voice, you are the resistance.